Welcome into the second installment of the DNVR Avalanche Season Preview. Nathan Rudolph with Evan Rowell this time to talk about the Avalanche defense, or at least the majority of it here, the established pieces to a certain extent. The man we love to talk about here, is he the smallest player on the Avs? He's certainly the smallest defenseman on the Avs in Sam Girard.
I think he's got to be the smallest guy on the Avs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a small forward that could maybe compete, but I think Girard's the smallest by a good margin.
Yeah, and he's I think he's going to be the guy this year that kind of that takes on some heavy minutes. So it's going to be interesting to watch because now he's in his fourth year in the NHL. He is a veteran at this point, and he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He'll go through the spurts where we saw it last year where Makar was out and they had to lean on him heavily, so teams focused on him. So he was making a little bit more mistakes then. But when he's on his game, he's basically a perfect breakout machine. So he's going to take on, I think, a bigger role defensively this year, and it'll be fun to watch.
Yep, we can bring up his stats from last year just to show. Ended up with 34 points in 70 games. As you alluded to, Evan, much more of a distributor than a goal scorer. We kind of understand shooting the puck is one of his weaknesses, but that isn't to say he can't be productive. We even saw in one stretch at about the turn of the new year where he put up 8 points in 3 games. Now, that's obviously on the extreme high end, but it does certainly seem like there might be a little bit more wiggle room for him to produce offensively.
Yeah, offensively, he tends to distribute a little bit too much in the offensive zone. He likes to stay on the perimeter rather than attacking. And how many times have we said, he just passes up too many shots looking for the perfect pass. But he's a very creative player, so he's going to look to do that stuff. So there's production there. He was a high scoring guy in the queue as well. It's just, goal scoring is not going to be where it comes from. He's going to be the distributing guy, so other guys need to finish what he starts.
Do you think he will continue to distribute fists to Alex DeBrincat's face this season?
He can't. They're not going to be playing each other, and I don't expect Chicago in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's probably true. Chicago's not looking. He'll have to find another small guy to fight with, I guess. But for Girard, on a whole, you already mentioned it. It's his 4th year on the team. The Avs have actually never missed the playoffs in the Sam Girard era. Is there a transition for him? Is he starting to move almost into a veteran role on this defense?
I think so, especially, you look at the other veterans on the team with Johnson and Cole tend to be hurt, may not be in the lineup all the time. So Girard kind of takes on that bigger veteran role as well. So I think he's definitely moving in that way. And we saw in the playoffs that they lean on him heavily. They're not afraid to put him out there a lot. And, I think, we'll talk about the expectations, obviously, but, what they do with him offensively is going to be interesting this year because they have Devon Toews now to, kind of fill in there a little bit as well.
Yeah, let's get to his big question before we get to his expectations, which we kind of already drifted into here. But how much more growth is there in Sam Girard's game? We tend to forget just how young he is, but this is a player not in his prime yet by any means. People consider prime anywhere from about 25 to 28 nowadays. He's not even close to 25 yet.
No.
So,
yeah, he flashes so much offensively that that there is more to give. It's just a matter of, can he get it out of there? And the reality is, offensively, Makar's going to be the guy, and he's going to be the guy for the next 10 years. So that top power play unit spot where a lot of this production could come from is just realistically not going to be there for him. So it's going to be a lot of even strength production. And, with Toews, now we wonder, who's going to be on the second unit, because Toews did a lot of power play time in New York as well. So it's going to be interesting. I think the growth that, maybe not offensively is going to come. I think it's going to be defensively where he can really show, it doesn't matter how big I am, I can shut down the other team's best players. And I think that's kind of where he's going to be headed this year.
Almost finding an identity for himself in this new look. It's not that new, but this new Colorado Avalanche defense.
Yeah. And him shutting down other teams is almost as much as him just not letting them have the puck because he's got it all the time.
That never hurts when your defense can transition the puck for you. Something Sam Girard is excellent at, and is also our expectation for him to continue doing through this season. Colorado is arguably the best skating team in the league, and Sam pushing the tempo even harder. And honestly, I think he may have already cemented himself as one of the most underrated players in the league. But getting that reputation outside of the Colorado bubble and more league-wide, I think. Yeah,
I think it's now 2 years in a row where he's the top controlled zone exit leader in the NHL in terms of percentage. So he's very efficient at getting the puck out of the zone, and he helps the Avs play the way that they want to play, and that's with a lot of speed. So I expect that to continue, and that he's going to just take on a bigger role every year because the coaching staff obviously trusts him.
So let's go from the new veteran to the old veteran in Erik Johnson, the Condor, or perhaps not. If you're AJ Hafley, you hate the nickname, but that's all right. He's allowed to hate fun sometimes. EJ saw a big transition in role last year. If you bring up his stats, you'll see exactly what I mean. Not a particularly productive season for him offensively, but that does not mean he lacked impact on the ice.
Yeah, offensively, his game, I think he accepted that he's not going to be depended on to play the power play or be the guy that rushes up the ice anymore. And that's a good thing. A guy who's a former first overall pick who accepts the role that he's transitioning into, that's great. He went a very long time without scoring a goal at one point in the year. And basically his big job on this team is he's essentially the go-to guy killing penalties. And we saw in the playoffs when he was not there, they struggled. They need him on the ice to kill penalties because he's probably their best penalty killer as a defenseman. So that's kind of where he's transitioning into, and he can still step in occasionally to play the big minutes, but at this stage in his career and where the Avs are at, they don't need him to do that.
For sure. It's a transitional role that does feel a little bit weird. We've talked a lot how he might not be worth his contract to this point. That's not to say he's not valuable, but his big question is not one you have to think very hard about. It's the same question that's plagued him essentially his entire career. Can this guy stay healthy as he ages?
Yeah, and the reality is we don't even know if he's healthy from last year too. So we kind of expect that he is, but this is, it's going to be a sprint. This season is going to be a sprint, 56 games, and they're going to be tightly packed. So they're going to need him. It might be best for the Avs to even give him nights off with the depth that they have coming, assuming that he manages to make it through the season. So that's always going to be the big question with him. And you hope that the lesser minutes that he plays, the greater the chance that he can actually stay healthy.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that we'll get to later in this series that are certainly chomping at the bit if he does go down. So we'll see how that plays out throughout the season, but EJ still certainly provides value, and our expectations are almost exactly what you just put it as. He's going to wear the A for the Avs. He's going to be that veteran leader on defense that's been with the organization for a long time. It's just a matter of, is he going to be on the ice a ton? What does his minutes look like on a day in, day out basis? Is it starting to get cut down? Probably, but he's still going to be there and still be impactful in whatever way he can be.
Yeah, and we saw it in the playoffs. If he can walk, he's going to try to be on the ice to help his team. So he's a great guy in that locker room. You just talk to him at his locker, which we're not doing anymore. But you talk to him, and he I guess he speaks very fluently. He knows what he's talking about, and the players in the locker room, they listen. He's a great veteran presence, and the Avs they desperately miss that veteran presence in the playoffs, and you just hope that he's healthy and can help them all throughout the year.
Let's talk about the other old guy then, Ian Cole. Not even that old. I know. Cole's only like a couple years older than I am, so
He's younger than me.
yeah, between the two of us, splits the difference. Look, Cole had a fantastic year last year. Coming off of double hip surgery, he puts up a career high in points. If we can bring up his stats here, the dude just found his way to points in a defensive system that allowed him to help significantly on the breakout a lot, whether that was him breaking out the puck or just being the smart guy and getting the puck to his partner.
Yeah, and I went back and I watched all of his points because you just put the video up, and a lot of them are just simple plays, like just put the puck on net. A lot of plays where he cuts off a guy in the neutral zone with a great defensive play, and then the Avs transition back the other way. So it's just smart, simple plays that he succeeded in last year. He's at his best when he's just trying not to do too much, and he can get into trouble when he's going for a big hit, or he's trying to make a pass that he's really not super capable of making. But when he plays within himself, he's a very effective third pairing defenseman.
And I think that's the role we're moving toward here. A third pairing defenseman for Ian Cole, something we've talked about is potentially even a rotating seventh. So that's the big question. For a guy who just had a career high in points, how does he handle a diminished role and maybe not playing every single night role in limited minutes?
It will be interesting to see because I believe at the end of his time in Pittsburgh, there were some questions, and that's why he left and got traded. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because the Avs, the reality is they have young defensemen coming, including a number 4 overall pick that you guys are going to talk about later. So they're going to need to find ways to get these guys in the lineup. And same with EJ. Cole was, pretty healthy last year, but he's not a guy who's been super healthy his entire career. So if he gets hurt and gets taken out of the lineup and a guy like Byram comes in and takes a spot, then, how's he going to handle that? Or even just if he gets a night off, how's he going to handle that? So he's another guy like EJ who it's great to talk to. You can learn a lot just from talking to him, and the players in that locker room respect him. So I don't think it's going to be a big issue if he, has to sit out for some of these younger guys. But it's always a question, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles it.
It's something we downplay often on the DNVR Avalanche podcast, but this is a guy that's won 2 Stanley Cups. It's a guy who's been there and done it before, and I am not a huge believer on how much of an on-ice impact that makes, but as a presence in the locker room, that's a guy that people are going to look to, especially if you make a conference finals for the first time, if this Avs team manages to do something like that.
Absolutely. And, the one thing that Jared Bednar always wants is his team talking on the ice. And Ian Cole is one guy who is very, very good at communicating with his defensive partner. I think Cale Makar talked about it last year when they briefly played together. He would be a very good partner for Byram if it came to it, because he will communicate with him and help him out if he needs help. So he's won a couple cups, and he's coming off his best statistical year, so he can obviously still help this team. It's just that they're so deep. You wonder how much they even need him at this point. So they have embarrassment of riches on defense right now.
And that brings us to our expectations for Ian Cole. You can basically take this one right out of the veteran handbook. Steady presence, bring it every night. It's very straightforward. This is a guy you can expect to come out, do things like PK for the Avalanche when he's in the lineup.
Absolutely. Just more of what he did last year. If he can do anything, I would say cut down on the penalties, but, just more of what he did last year and being, just a very stable presence on that third pair. And stepping up if he needs to, because he has shown he can do that in spurts too.
All right. The final defenseman we're going to talk about in this video, Ryan Graves, with his newly minted 3-year contract for a little over $3 million, put up the exact same amount of points as Ian Cole did last year, actually, but came with quite a few more goals, did Graves. 9 goals, 17 assists for 26 points. The kid does have a pretty big bomb of a shot.
That he does, and he is not afraid to use it. He lets that puck I guess he unleashes that puck frequently when he's on the ice. We often said last year, how is the puck always going to Graves? That the offense seems to be running through Graves. Would prefer not to see that this year, but I mean, 9 goals in 66 games for a defenseman who does not play on the power play is very good production. Now, can he do that again? I'm not sure. We saw in the playoffs there was a dip in his play, and you wonder how much of that was teams getting more tape on him, getting an idea of how to play against him, or just because the fact that he was played too much because EJ was out, they had to play somebody too much, and he took on some heavy minutes, playing 25 minutes sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to see just how they use him and how he handles his second full NHL season.
Yeah, we saw him get used in all situations at 5-on-5 and in all situations in penalty kill. The only time he wasn't getting was power play, really. So the Avs clearly weren't afraid to use him, which does lead us to our big question here for him. The Graves last year weren't even sure if he was going to make the lineup. This year, he's pretty much a lock for the lineup, but can he prove himself to be for real? Is this more than just a one-hit wonder?
Yeah, and we know the coaching staff loves him. We should have seen it coming last year when in training camp, I didn't think he looked that great through preseason. And, Jared Bednar said, that's someone we think is going to replace Patrick Nemeth. So they obviously think highly of him. He is a smart player. He's one of those guys where, in the AHL, maybe he wasn't showing as much because it's a little bit more chaotic. But in the NHL systems, he knows what to do. He makes smart decisions. He's like Cole. If he plays within himself, he's just fine. We saw last year, when he got into troubles, when he tried to do a little bit too much, pinching in a little bit too much because he just doesn't have the skating ability to make up for it. So I actually fully expect him to get another chance to stay with Makar because they had chemistry last year, and that's going to give him more than enough opportunity to prove that last year was not a fluke.
So he should have the opportunity to prove himself. The expectations there. Look, when Graves is at his best, he's being physical. And I think that's where our expectations lead to. If this is a guy that can step up a little bit and fill that void that everyone is clamoring for of, the Avs defense doesn't have the big physical presence anymore. He doesn't have to be Zadorov levels, but just help fill that void a little bit. You could see this guy establish himself as a longtime NHL defenseman.
Absolutely. Yeah, without Zadorov, you would think he's the guy that they're going to look to a little bit more physical. We've seen him throw big hits in the past. He just doesn't do it with a lot of frequency. So, he has the ability. He's got the size. That's kind of where he can step up a little bit more and play that physical game. But, I expect him to be a regular in this lineup and just continue to play steady minutes. And, with Taves here, I think his minutes might drop a little bit, which would be good for him. But I think he's going to play a lot on the PK and hopefully provide a little bit more physical presence this year.
Hard to argue with any of that. It's exciting times when you consider a player like this as pretty much a bottom six guy, a third pairing guy. Yeah, I know he'll play with Makar, whatever, but not someone that you're relying on to play big minutes unless you want to.
Mm-hmm. And they found him out of nothing.
Yeah. Traded for him when he had 0 NHL games played and is now set to be an NHL regular. So we can go ahead and wrap up this defensive preview video here. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to catch the rest of the series as we're releasing all of these videos over the next 2 weeks. Thank you for that. And also be sure to check out the accompanying content over on thednvr.com. The amazing AJ Hafley, amazing AJ Hafley is writing a bunch of articles covering all of the Avs as well. They are primo. Be sure to check those out. And if you really love us, consider subscribing to the site. We kind of are a business. We kind of like your support. So thank you very much. And we will catch you very soon with another preview video.